The road to nowhere was more overgrown than usual. What used to be a ranger's path through the sagepine timberline had become a trail only the wind. Remembered years of drought, then fire then flood, had turned the outer woods brittle. And silent. There were no signs, no cabins, marked no humming engines. Just the sound of breeze moving through pines like someone exhaling too slowly. But down an old ravine, partially hidden by rockslide and the charred bones of trees there, was still one cabin standing. Barely inside it lived Cole Mercer, though even he wouldn't have called it living. 43 years old, once a battlefield photographer, with international acclaim a byline under his shots in every major paper, now just a man in a wheelchair, shadows under his eyes, deeper than the lines on his weather-beaten face. A spinal cord injury had taken his legs 6 years ago in Syria, but that wasn't what really broke him. What really broke him was silence when the cameras stopped flashing. The friends stopped calling and no one knew what to do with a man who couldn't chase life anymore, so Cole chased nothing. The cabin had been his uncle's, once used for hunting elk. Now it was rigged with solar panels, an old satellite receiver and a drone. He barely used the internet, worked when the clouds didn't roll in. His pantry was down to powdered lentils and expired beans, and he rationed water from a catchment barrel near the roof, but that was fine. No one was supposed to know he was here. That morning was colder than most. Late autumn had snuck in early, the air sharp and dry. Cole boiled the last of the oats and stared at the bowl like it had insulted him. Then he heard it, a thump, no more like a soft scuffle. Something light. He turned off the burner and grabbed his drone monitor, adjusting the exterior camera. He was expecting raccoons, again maybe a porcupine, but what came into view wasn't anything that predictable. It stepped out from between two blackened logs like it had always belonged there, a young bobcat, not a house cat. This was unmistakably wild, short-trimmed tail, flicking side to side, long legs too thin for its body and wide alert eyes. The color of river clay, its fur was a dusty gray-brown, patchy, in places faint black spots rippling along its side. And it limped. Cole froze. The bobcat, didn't it? Walked past the compost heap up the steps, limping. On its front right, Pan stopped just 3 feet from Cole's threshold. They stared at each other for a long time, man and cub, broken things in a broken place. The bobcat tilted its head. Cole exhaled, finally, like air had returned to the room. "You lost it," we muttered, unsure whether he meant it as a question or confession. With the bowl in hand, he slowly pushed it to the porch's edge. "Leftovers," he said aloud. "It's all I've got." The cub stepped forward, cautious but not afraid. She sniffed the bowl, looked at him once more, and then without ceremony ate, not ravenously, deliberately, as if dignity mattered more than hunger. Cole didn't move. He didn't want to ruin it. For the next 5 minutes, he watched her chew, slowly lick her paw, and glance around as if she was still debating whether this was a mistake. Then she was gone, quietly back into the woods. No noise but the scrape of injured claws over wood. He told himself it was a one-time thing. Probably an orphaned cub got separated from her mother. She wouldn't return. But the next day Si came again, and the next. It wasn't long before Cole began calling her Indra. Not because of some myth or nature book, he didn't believe in symbols anymore, but because that had been the name of a little girl he photographed during the Nepal quake in 2010, a girl with a bandaged leg and solemn eyes who'd held his hand in a collapsed hospital corridor for 8 hours. She died before the medevac arrived. Cole never forgot her eyes. This bobcat had those same eyes, eyes that had seen pain and decided to survive anyway. Cole didn't tell anyone. Who would he tell? He had one emergency contact listed with the ranger station, a cousin he hadn't spoken to in 4 years. He barely checked messages. His phone only charged when the sun held out for 3 straight days, so it became a kind of pact, quiet, unspeakable, sacred. Indra never let him touch Herbert. She'd wait at the porch in the evenings, Nars glowing like 2 lanterns. She ate close to him, slept once under the cabin's edge during a storm. And something inside Cole began to shift. He started filming her, not for content, but for memory. Slow meditative shots, blinking in soft light, limping but graceful, rubbing her cheek on a porch post. He even narrated sometimes short phrases, descriptions, like he was making a film no one would ever see. "I don't know why you're here," he whispered once into the lens. "Maybe we're both too stubborn to die." He paused, then added, "Or maybe one of us isn't ready yet, and the other one's too stupid to let go." He meant her, but maybe he didn't. The forest was different without her, not louder, not quieter, just wrong. Cole sat on the porch longer than usual that morning, eyes scanning the trees like he used to scan sniper lines, hands trembling on the drone controller, but not from fear, from something else. Absenthed, come every day for 19 days, at dawn or near sunset, sometimes twice, eating slow, watching slower, then nothing. He waited through the rain, through the shifting light, through the silence that coiled around him like a second spine. By the second night, he wasn't worried. Not yet. She was wild, after all, maybe hunting, maybe resting, maybe she'd found something better than cold lentils and a broken man's porch butt. On the third day, something cracked. He launched the drone before sunrise, let it rise past the clearing, skimming the treetops, eyes flickering between the monitor and the horizon. Every shadow became her, every log a maybe nothing. Not even Crozy should have given up. Let nature do what it does, let her go, but he didn't. He packed the chair, rigged his frame with old belts and shoulder straps, filled a thermos with broth and slid it into a side pouch, clipped a flare to his lap and a broken compass to his belt, and then he left the porch. The wheels snagged on roots before he even hit the tree line. He cursed, breathed, reversed, did it again, hands blistering by the second. His old self would have laughed. The man who outran rebels in Congo, who lived off military rations in Aleppo. That man would have said, this was madness. A suicide march in denim and sweat, but that man was dead. This one, this version of Cole Mercer, was the one crawling over gravel with fire in his gut and a name on his lips. Indro. He whispered it like a prayer, like a promise, like he owed her something he couldn't name. Half a mile in, the trees opened into a patch of blackened meadow, remnants of an old burn zone, charred trunks like broken teeth against the sky, and that's where he found Hercled, near a fallen pine. Poor, caught in a snare trap made of coiled wire and rusted cruelty. Blood soaked the earth beneath her, not gushing, just leaking slow. She didn't move when he approached, didn't growl, didn't cry. Her eyes opened, one amber, one clouded. She saw him manned for a second. Something passed between them, not fear, not relief, just recognition. "You're a damn idiot," he muttered, and dropped to his knees. The wire was old, handmade, probably for coyotes. It had cut through fur and muscle, wrapped tight like punishment. He didn't have cutters, hadn't thought that far, so he reached for his belt, unhooked the axe head he used as a makeshift wrench, tied it to a stone with the cord from his hoodie, and started slamming the trap. Every hit sent a jolt through his hands. Every crack tore skin from his knuckles. But he kept going. When the wire snapped, she didn't run, she just lay there, breathing shallow, body shivering from Cole bundled her in his jacket. No time to make a stretcher, so he used his coat like a sling, tying the sleeves around the chair armrests, moving slow. Every inch a battleshay was heavier than she looked, dense with muscle and pain. But she didn't resist, she just trusted. By the time they reached the cabin, the sun was red. Behind smoke, sirens echoed far off. Fire teams moving along the ridge. A wildfire had sparked 2 towns over. Nothing urgent yet, but the wind was shifting. Ash began falling like snow. Cole wheeled into the kitchen, placed her on a folded towel, grabbed the first aid kit he hadn't touched since Afghanistan, and started cleaning the wound. No vet, no anesthesia, just salt water, gauze, and the sound of his own heartbeat hammering in his ears. She twitched but didn't strike when he poured peroxide. She let out a sound so human it made his chest ache, like a gasp swallowed by pride. He whispered to her the whole time, not words, just sound, breath, and presence. The storm didn't break that night, but the fire got closer. Didn't sleep, sat beside her with a flashlight and his old Nikon, just holding it, not shooting, just holding. In the morning, when the wind died down, she opened her eyes, not fully, not bright, but open, enlivened for the first time in years. So was he. The wind shifted again, Not in whispers, but with weight. A heat-thick gust that rolled down the ridge like something alive. It brought the smoke first. Low and grey, curling between the trees, like it was searching for cracks, Cole stood. In the doorway, sweat already collecting at the base of his spine, ash drifted like petals across the porch, soft. Deceptive, the kind of beautiful that usually meant something was dying elsewhere. Indra hadn't moved in an hour. Her breath was slower now, not labored, but careful, as if she understood that any sudden motion might tear something loose. Inside her he touched her gently with the back of his hand. Her fur was damp from fever, and the makeshift poultice he'd wrapped around the wound. Honey, garlic, crushed bark, survival medicine. Not science, but it was holding for now. The forest wasn't. Launched the drone again. Set it to sweep the southern line, and what came back on the screen made his stomach not fire. Not bright and cinematic like movies, but dark, low, crawling across the forest floor like liquid orange ink, consuming moss, bark and brush. It wasn't fast yet, but it was. Cole had survived war zones, bombings, near drownings, but he'd never been paralyzed during one, never had to weigh what he could carry when every pound of gear cost him time and every step was metal on soil now. He had Indra, unconscious, barely stable, and 40 minutes. Until the fire crossed the creek, he rolled inside, grabbed the emergency satchel, slung it over the chair back. One canteen, a protein bar, lighter, flare, painkillers, compress wraps. A charger for the drone. That was it. No time for more. The decision was so stupid it felt holy. He tied his coat around Indra like before, double-looped it beneath her chest, buckled her weight to the side rail of the wheelchair. With rope he'd once used to hoist firewood, she groaned once, then stilled. The porch was already humming with Cole shoved forward, wheels snagging on fallen needles and cracked flagstones. The air around him beginning to taste like metal and pine. He followed the old ridge path, not toward the road, that would take too long, but north, toward the emergency firebreak the state had dug 2 years earlier. If he could reach it, the forestry team might be stationed nearby, might have medical kits, might have water, might have mercy. The path tilted left, then right. His shoulders screamed, blisters peeled open, his eyes burned from more than just smoky. Didn't stop, not even when the sky turned orange, not even when flames snapped branches behind the Mindra. Whimpered once, her breath ragged. He leaned forward and whispered, almost there, don't go dark on me, not now, not now. The last 50 yards were hell. The trail narrowed between two boulders, no room for the chair, not with her strapped in. He tried to lift her, couldn't. Tried again. The muscles in his arms trembled, like cables snapping. He dropped her gently into the coat sling, tied it to his chest like a harness, then dragged her forward, scraping his knees, biting his own lip to keep from screaming. And then sirens, faint, at first, then louder, boots on gravel, voices, a woman's shout. We see them. We got eyes on a man, and an animal. Repeat, injured man, and Bobcat. Cole tried to speak, couldn't, just nodded once, before everything dimmed around the edge. Izzy passed out before the helicopter even landed. He woke in a med tent at a fire base 40 miles north of in his arm, smoke still thick in his throat, lungs wrapped in fires. Memory. Indra wasn't beside him. He panicked, clawed at the straps, muttered, where is she? Where's the cub? The nurse pointed behind him. Inside a steel crate, sedated, legs bandaged, eyes fluttering beneath sleep, was Indra alive, still breathing, and, for the first time in years, so was he. It started with a 17-second clip, raw drone footage, no edits, no music, just the charred ground, the trembling wheels, and the limp Bobcat cub tied to the side of a modified wheelchair, crawling forward through smoke. Cole hadn't meant to upload it, not at first. He'd edited the clip, only to show the firebase crew what he'd done, to explain why he'd nearly died dragging a half-wild animal across burning ground. But one of the firefighters, a woman named Kara, had asked if she could post it on her social feed. Just to remind people what survival looks like, she said. By dawn it had over 300,000 views. By nightfall, it was on every news network in the country. Paralyzed man rescues injured Bobcat from wildfire. Survival has 4 legs and 1 broken wheel. Who's saving who? The question a burned-out soldier is Forcing us to ask, they found his older clips too, the voice diaries, the shaky porch monologues. Indra's slow recovery comments flooded in, hundreds per minute, people crying, people confessing, people telling him. He reminded them they weren't alone, and just as fast. The backlash wildlife lobbyist in Sacramento called it reckless, said Cole was humanizing a predator, warned that it set a dangerous precedent for emotional wildlife activism. Local authorities reopened his file. Someone leaked footage of Indra snarling near the porch light. It was grainy. But the headline was clear. Disabled man harbors dangerous wild animal. Should she be euthanized? Cole didn't sleep that week. The hospital discharged him to a nearby motel. A state investigator showed up with a clipboard and a forced smile asked if he'd be willing to surrender the animal for relocation. He said no. The investigator said that wasn't a request. And then, just when it felt like the whole thing would collapse, she arrived. Dr. Leanne O. 39.com. Composed and known for not blinking in front of cameras, head vet for Wild Reach International, a wildlife crisis organization that handled rescue and rehabilitation for apex predators. She walked into the motel room with a tablet in one hand and legal documents in the other, didn't knock twice, just said, "She stays with you for now. I've got federal clearance to transfer her medical guardianship under our supervision, but we do it by the book." Cole stared at her, no handshake, just disbelief. Leanne said, "You didn't rescue a bobcat, you triggered a conversation this country's been afraid to have about trauma, about recovery, about species we've written off, so let's make it count." Within 48 hours, Wildreach issued a statement. Indra was not being domesticated, not being turned into a pet. She was in monitored recovery, under licensed care. Her eventual rewelding was under consideration pending injury assessment. The hate slowed, not vanished, but blunted. People wanted updates, not raged. So Cole gave them stories. He filmed Indra licking water from a stainless bowl, one paw still stiff, eyes half glazed but aware. He posted a voice log called Day 42. "I'm starting to feel the air again." In it, he talked not about war, not about fire, but about the first time he'd ever let anything depend on him without running away. "I thought rescue was a one-way thing," he said, "but she changed something in me. She came broken and limping and still chose to trust. And somehow, that rewired something in me I didn't even know was fried." The clip went viral again, not for spectacle, but for truth. Meanwhile, politicians tried to spin it. Environmental groups used it to argue for better fire management. Trauma therapists shared the footage in support groups, and Cole, who had spent the last 6 years trying to disappear, became a symbol for something he didn't know how to define. He hated most of it: the headlines, the hashtags, the cheap inspiration quotes using his face. But he kept sharing updates anyway, because somewhere out there, he knew someone like him was watching, stuck in their own chair, or bed, or mental loop, wondering if it ever changed. And one night, as he sat beside Indra's crate, watching her dream in little jerks and paw twitches, he whispered something he hadn't said in years: "Thank you." The forest grew back, slower than people expected, but it grew. New saplings punched through ash-crusted soil. Grass returned in streaks of stubborn green. Elk trails reappeared, and somewhere along the new northern edge of the rewilding corridor, a motion sensor camera caught a glimpse of her short tail, dusty gray coat, faint rings along the back. Same limp on the front right paw, but her eyes burned bright, alive, aware. It was Indra. 5 years since the fire, 3 since her full release, and she was still out there. Cole stood in front of the image, fingers on the printed copy, pinned to his office wall. No glass frame, just tacks and tape. He liked it that way. It felt real. He never saw her up close again, not since the release, when they opened the crate and she stepped out. Without looking back, like wild things do, no goodbyes, just space, and sky, and freedom. But he felt her everywhere, in the way the light fell across the cabins of the Indra Initiative Center for Wildlife Integrated Recovery. In the scent of pine after a storm, in the sound of one of the therapy dogs growling. At Deer Beyond the Fence, the center was his now, but not his alone. He had built it with Leanne, and with the help of veterans, trauma survivors, former firefighters, and youth volunteers from the same county that once called Indra a threat they came to heal, and sometimes just to sit in silence, the way Cole once did on a porch long burned Awatha program, combined wildlife rehab with human trauma therapy, not for tourists, not for content, but for connection, for the rewiring. That happens when a person looks into the eyes of an animal that doesn't need saving. Just witnessing. And Cole was walking again, not like before, not smooth or fast, but with carbon leg braces and a crutch shaped to his wrist, every step earned. Shaky, imperfect, but his people asked him how it happened, how he recovered when doctors said he wouldn't. He never gave a clear answer. Sometimes he said it was adrenaline that rewoke the nerves during the fire crawl. Sometimes he said it was stubbornness, or luck, or Leanne's rehab plans. But late at night, when the halls were empty and the wind pressed against the windows, he'd whisper the truth to himself. It was her. The moment he chose to carry Indra, not just physically, but fully, was the moment his body decided it wasn't done yet. Some wounds don't close until something living walks into the room and reminds you who you used to be. He gave speeches, now rare ones, always off script. No PowerPoints, just stories. And the story he told most often wasn't about war, or paralysis, or fire. It was about the moment a wild bobcat limped out of the brush and asked for leftovers, and how that moment cracked something open, and how the world rushed in through that crack one spring during a quiet afternoon when no therapy sessions were scheduled. Cole took a walk to the northern fence just to feel the wind off the Ridgeline there just beyond the trees. He saw her, not Indra, but a cub, maybe 5 months, old, ringed tail flicking in curiosity, watching him with the kind of calm you can't teach. Behind her, deeper in the trees, a larger shadow moved, pausing only for a second, enough for Cole to catch the glint of one clouded eye. Then Gonhe didn't speak, didn't step closer, just stood there, heart full, eyes wet, knees locked, because in that instant he knew she had lived, she had healed, she had made her own future, and so had he.